the ethics questions are less about procedures. They're less about bureaucratic and more about the actual content of ethics. What is our responsibility? How do we protect our informants? How do we produce research that has integrity? And how do we establish a relationship of reciprocity through which our subjects might actually benefit from participating? So to me, the questions are more interesting. So what I want to explain is how I see fieldwork then. And this, I think, is different to the way that I, as an anthropologist, not as a member of an ethics committee. So for a moment, I'm going to talk as professor of anthropology and thesis advisor, not as ethics committee member. So what do I tell my students? Well, people open their lives to fieldworkers when they do participant observation. They don't just agree to talk to us for half an hour. They open their doors, their families, their major life events. They let us in. We get a kind of access that there's no way that you can get in any other form. They, in some cases, build relationships with us that go far beyond the actual research contexts. And in some ways, there's no way we can really repay them. We amass a debt to them which is beyond research. It's a human debt, a debt of living together, the conviviality. And it's often to people who have very little materially. This is, I think, the most overwhelming thing for field workers when they go to places like Fiji or Brazil, is that folks will give you things. And the crushing sense that you get of being unable to repay very materially poor people who are yet very generous. And that's the sort of footing I start on ethically, which is a sense of great gratitude and debt to the people who I work with. There are mechanisms of compensation and reciprocity that do make sense in long-term relationships, and there's some that make no sense. Small cash payments, in many contexts, not only make no sense, they're actually insulting. And they're not just culturally insensitive, they can signal that you're trying to break a relationship rather than agreeing to accept a debt. So how do we accomplish reciprocity? Well, I don't think we protect people by restricting the kind of relationships we have, but rather by building a sufficiently strong two-way relationship. That is, we have to be vulnerable to them as much as we are sort of insulated from them. So fieldwork over the long term offers a kind of opposite to what we often see as a model, which is the one-off method where we have a very restricted activity. We agree that for that length of time, a group should receive this amount of compensation, and it's all even and clear and free at the end, and we can walk away feeling ethically like we've done our duty. Fieldwork is nothing like that. I have people who I met in 1992 who I'm still in relationships to this day. Some of them are incredibly problematic relationships. Some of them are fraught relationships. As recently as a few years ago, a fellow called me out of the clear blue. He was in Sydney from Brazil. He arrived and he asked me, why wasn't I there to take care of him? I didn't even know he was coming. You know, sort of, but this is the kind of relationships that build up. And so as an anthropologist, I have to think about those sorts of relationships, which I point out as something that's never covered in an ethics process, which is how do you extract yourself from the relationships and what persists after the project is over? What kind of relationship are you in after you're done? Those are very seldom questions we even ask. You know, what are you going to do? Recently, a colleague pointed out, I told one of my students, I said, you know, don't sleep with the locals. And she was sort of taken aback. She said, everybody sleeps with the locals. I said, try to extract yourself from that field site. You know, like, seriously. Where I live, that, you know, I'm talking to people about maintaining relationships that make sense and not misrepresenting who you are or what you intend. And so one of the reasons I said to a student was to shock them, to sort of point out to them that their time had a limit and that the people who see them there stop seeing that limit. They stop seeing you as a researcher and they see you as a person, which is actually really good. I mean, that's the point.